Hey everybody, this is Sergeant Helgerson. Thanks for listening. This is the first in a series of podcasts where I interview people about professional development in the Air Force. Normally there are some standard topics people want you to learn about, but I decided to take a slightly different approach. I asked you guys what you thought was most important and what subjects would most interest you. And then I sat down with some of the best experts in our unit to get their perspective on each of those subjects. I think you'll like the results. This first interview is with our commander, Major R. Scott Wallace. We talked about each of the subjects in the upcoming podcast to get his perspective. I knew even before I interviewed him that I would be impressed, and he did not disappoint. I found, and I think you will too, an impressive level of insight, compassion, and humor. I hope you enjoy this and get as much out of it as I did. Let's get started. Fantastic. Cool. So we're online. Isn't that great?
Sure.
So the reason why we were doing this interview is because of the NCO professional development.
Right.
Because normally if you go online and you Google, NCO professional development, you'll get any number of PowerPoint slides, or you go to any wing and they say, okay, well, this is what we want for NCO professional development. And those things are great if you're at a regular Air Force base and you're, fulfilling a regular mission. I don't know if anybody really has a regular mission, but I like to call it
if
more.
You're in a mission within your traditional career field.
Yeah, with traditional career field, and more. I call it more of the corporate mission.
Sure.
Like this is the corporate ideal of how things should be. But as soon as you get out of that and you go back to AETC, things get a little bit different because now you're dealing with pipeline students. You're not dealing with the same supervisory roles. You're not dealing with the same levels of upgrade training that you have to deal with, or like personnel management. I mean, a lot of it stays the same, but it's just a different color. And that's all well and good if you're at Shepherd or Keesler or Lackland, like a traditional AETC base. But then they took us and we stuck us over on an Army post. So it adds a whole different level of challenges.
Yeah, it's a great opportunity
to the mission. Yeah, it's been fascinating and fantastic.
A lot of people don't see what a great opportunity it is to be in an AETC environment on an Army on an Army installation.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I mean, yes, we're pulled out of our shops, the places that we are traditionally comfortable in, and that traditional career path through your years up to retirement. You're taken out of that. You may not be the shop lead right now, as your rank would normally put you at in your traditional path. But what other time in your career are you going to have the opportunity to day get leadership experience leading, training airmen?
Right.
And you are in front of more airmen, young airmen, than normal people in your career path.
Right.
You have the opportunity to teach them what it means to be an airman, to keep them on task, to show them the ins and outs of your career field.
Right.
And not be so hampered by getting the task done. Meaning, the different jobs that we have to do, the different projects that we have in our normal traditional career fields. Here we're teaching them tasks. We have the opportunity to take the time to make sure that they know how to get it right.
Right.
And we're still dealing with airmen. These are brand new kids out of high school, and we have the opportunity to mold them into real airmen. And I'm not talking mold them into dirt boys or mold them into EAs or mold them into EMers or combat truckers. I'm talking about molding them into airmen who know how to do those jobs, who understand the core values, who understand how the core values are applied to their jobs. Right. That's our main task here. Is we are training and inspiring warriors, training and developing airmen. We're not training and developing dirt boys. We're not training and developing EAs. Our mission is not to do that.
Right.
It's to develop airmen who know how to do these jobs. And as long as we can be focused on that, it's inspiring to get up every day and have the opportunity to go do that.
Right.
It's a tough job here. ATC is no picnic. We're used to being able to be more free out in our career fields with how we tackle situations. We're tied here to a POI, and we're tied to being able to, or to making sure that we are the image and the inspiration to these airmen every single day. And sometimes that can be taxing. But if we remember what the end goal is, and really are tied to this mission of training inspiring warriors, we can sometimes get over that the 4 years that we're here doing that, and really
or sometimes more,
and really see how much of an impact we're making across the Air Force. I talked to a lot of people before coming to this assignment, from the EA career field, from the emergency management. I did not get to talk to vehicle operators, but I talked to everybody else about how was your experience in training, what, since you've been in the Air Force now in your first duty station for a while, what do you wish you would have learned?
Right.
And how is the training environment? What do you think should be changed? I was trying to get an idea of me coming in as the new boss, what do we need to be doing different?
Right.
And a lot of people were really pleased with their training. There were some things that they thought should be changed, and it was already underway. A lot of the changes that we've made in the P&E schoolhouse with the new course are things that those airmen directly told me this needs to change, and well, we were already doing it, so it was already about to be in place when I got here. So the feedback is definitely getting to the schoolhouse on what we need to do here, and I'm really pleased with the efforts and the progress that we've made across all the schoolhouses to provide great airmen to the Air Force.
You're in another unique position, though, in that you are the only... No, you're not the only Air Force officer. You're one of 2 Air Force officers here in Fort Leonard Wood, right? Because I think there's a major that works with the security forces and their training projects over there. And then there's a couple of guard.
There's a guard lieutenant colonel that works at Cannon Range.
Okay. Yeah, I always forget about him.
Not assigned. He's actually assigned out at Whiteman, but works out at Cannon Range.
But on a day-to-day basis,
you don't run into these people very much. I've talked to that person once, and I've never met the security forces major.
Right. So we've got a big mission that has to go here,
right?
And you're the officer at the helm, kind of making sure that we're staying on point and we're sticking to the vision and we're following guidance and we're doing all the things that we need to be doing. But everybody else is enlisted,
right?
And like on an average day, about 300 or so people, with another 500 or 600 different moving parts, all these different directions. And in order to do that, then we got to have, like, our NCOs have to be on point and on task and all singing off the same shitty music.
And they are.
Right?
Yeah.
And I have to say that I think that I don't think I've ever come across a better crew of NCOs in any one unit than I've seen here. Just the positivity and the professionalism and just the good attitude and really, really genuinely caring about the airmen and their careers and wanting to get stuff done. I think that there's even been an uptick since the DSD program came online. We're getting more people who are eager to be here, who are selected to be here for good reasons, and you get fewer of the folks who are griping and complaining, because there's always going to be some of those. Sure. But I think those numbers kind of go down.
Get that.
Can't avoid that. Mm-hmm. But that kind of brings me back to like our role as senior NCOs in the top 3 then is to make sure that the rest of the NCOs have a clue about what they need to be doing and that they're getting good mentorship. And I think, like, over the course of my career, I think that mentorship is it easily becomes a buzzword. Mm-hmm. That we got to be doing mentorship, and you got to make sure that you're mentoring, you got to make sure that you're doing that kind of thing. But you don't get a lot of like good quality mentorship unless you have the time to sit down and talk with somebody, Yeah. And like with the mission that you're talking about in Aviano and the mission that you're talking about when you're overseas or even here, it's difficult to have the time to sit down with somebody, Staff Sergeant Jones, who's got some stuff going on, to sit down as a senior NCO and say, "Hey, buddy, I mean, you need some mentorship. Let's go take a knee and talk for a minute and work through some of this kind of stuff." So you have to do like mentorship on the fly.
Yeah.
You know.
So I don't think I started off right in the Air Force, at least as far as getting mentorship. Started off Fairchild Air Force Base. Commander there was really highly respected throughout the entire civil engineer community. I don't want to name any names because some people probably know him.
I think we're both thinking about the same person, though.
Yeah. So highly respected. He was on his way to be the civil engineer of the Air Force. He retired for family reasons, and is still doing great things. Still respect him as a person, but I don't think that I was mentored very well as a young airman. Mentorship, at least officer mentorship, consisted of, I wouldn't call them mandatory, but pretty much almost mandatory meetings at the club every Friday.
I remember that. That was a big thing. That was a big thing. Not just with him, but that seemed like it was in a lot of different places. That was like that was the temperature in the officer corps at the time was support the club and do this and get together.
So that was officially billed as our mentorship leadership time. And yet I don't recall any time where we talked about leadership or officership or anything, and yet it take time away from the family to go out and be in a place where me personally, I just didn't feel comfortable in that environment. But that was that's from the culture that I came from. But that was just me.
Well, and that's a fair point too. That in the military, drinking is a big thing.
It is.
And I personally don't think. I mean, there are times obviously for that. You got like a 4th of July barbecue, or you have a retirement, and hey, cool, great. But I've never agreed with having like mixing mentorship and leadership, and with leadership, and I mean with alcohol or any of those sorts of things. Like when I was an airman, I was a maintainer, as a helicopter mechanic, crew chief, and every Friday the commander bought a keg, and we just went and got plowed, and that was what we did on Fridays. But that was a much different time back then. Yeah. And even back then, I recognized that there's something fundamentally wrong with this. Like this shouldn't be such a focal point of our culture, around alcohol.
Yeah. Well, one other thing that bothered me initially about PME, professional military education, we'll call it that, was how secret it was. People would talk about going to squadron officer school, and it's like, oh, what do you do as squadron officer? Well, we can't tell you because that would jeopardize the integrity of the program. So we can't really tell you about the things that we do at squadron officer school, or and this is across all of PME. This is in the enlisted side and on the officer side. It's like, you're not supposed to talk about. You're not supposed to give hints as to what the assignments are, or talk about the things that you learn in PME, because that could jeopardize the integrity of the program. So
it seems like faulty logic.
Your PME was reserved for those official PME courses, whether they were the online courses or the in-residence courses. That was your opportunity to do PME. And you weren't supposed to be teaching other people, your younger peers, what you learned in PME, because their opportunity was going to come later. It really bugged me to see that there was certain lessons in leadership that were reserved for people who got to go in residence to do PME, and you couldn't talk about it outside of PME. At least now, whether that's true or not, that's the impression that I was given. And those were some of the conversations that I had. So as a young officer, that's how I was trained about PME.
Right.
Now, that may or may not be the actual case.
Right.
I'm just saying as a young leader, that's how I was brought up.
On the enlisted side, we get a lot more of, somebody will come back from the NCO Academy or a senior NCO Academy, or even, I remember this from ALS. and somebody comes back and they're an ALS graduate, and you're all excited, like, how was it? How'd it go? And the canned answer, 9.5 times out of 10 was, it was stupid, it was useless, it was boring, it was a waste of time. You know, you might get some folks that kind of get reblued maybe, or they go in there and they see the importance of it. Like our first sergeant, Sergeant Allen, just got back from the Senior NCO Academy, and admittedly, before he was going, he was kind of, you know,
not kind of. He didn't want to go.
Yeah, he was not happy about it. But then, now that he's back, he's a little more gung-ho, and he says, oh, this was actually a really good thing, and this was good training, and this was good, this is a really good experience.
Yeah, I've had a great experience every time I've gone to PME. I've learned a lot, and got a lot out of it.
Yeah.
But I think PME needs to be more professional development. Professional development needs to be more widespread throughout the Air Force. It shouldn't be reserved for certain periods of time.
Right.
Which is why I'm really glad that you're doing these podcasts, because you know, it just gives us a little bit more opportunity to be developing professionally. We are in the profession of arms. We are professionals. What that means is that we are supposed to be continually learning, continually getting better throughout our careers. We don't come in and get our 5 level, 7 level, 9 level and call it good.
Right.
We are continually developing. Our threats are continually developing throughout the world. They're continually changing to match what we can offer. And so we need to be continually getting better so that we can be the best military in the world to be able to respond to any threat that should befall our nation or its allies.
One of the reasons why I'm doing this the way that I'm doing it is because, to add on to what you're saying, is that as we move into the future, we've got a whole new set of challenges that we really never thought of before. So you're exactly right. We have to not only maintain our technical proficiency, you know, so we can just do the job, but, you know, technology is changing, people are changing, attitudes are changing, the way that we communicate is changing.
Yeah.
And I think that our manning is changing. Our, you know, just the people that we have available to do different things is changing.
Right.
So here I am on the tail end of my career, and there's a lot of things that I wish I would have learned. So it's sort of like you, that I wish somebody would have sat me down and had this conversation a long time ago. So what I did for the NCO professional development, because we are here, we're managing the technical training here, we're doing a really good job with that. But I came up with a list, and you and I talked about it as I was developing it. And I also put this out at Commander's Call a couple months ago, and I just put out a list and asked people to kind of rack and stack which topics that I had come up with they would be the most interested in hearing.
Right.
That they thought they would help develop on their career, because this isn't just, I don't want this to be PME.
Right.
You know, we're not talking about, you know, heritage or any of that kind of stuff that goes into PME, which is critical, but I wanted this to be something that could really address the specific issues that we've had here. And as it's developed, I've had some really interesting conversations with people.
Right.
In fact, the idea that led to the podcast was that as I was developing this list of topics for NCOPD, I would have an interesting conversation with Sergeant Keller, or with Captain Schmidt, or with you, or with Sergeant Rocky, and realize that the NCOs that I wanted to reach probably would have benefited more by just sitting in a room with me and Sergeant Rocky for an hour than going through another PowerPoint presentation about, this is how you counsel an airman, or which is beneficial in its own way, but you don't get the dynamic,
right?
You know, so that's what we're doing. But I want to start going through each one of these subjects,
okay?
And I want to get your take on these things. So we've had a couple conversations offline before we started, and earlier too. As people are listening to these podcasts, I'd really like them to also have your perspective on why these particular things are important to them from your perspective as a commander.
Okay.
And the things that you would like us as the senior NCO Corps to develop in our technical sergeants and staff sergeants, and help them carry on as they develop into their ranks, whether they become senior NCOs or if they get commissioned or whatever it is, or if they become civilians, you know. So the first subject is a book that you and I had talked about that was introduced to me by Captain Schmidt, called Crucial Conversations.
So Crucial Conversations. Obviously, we interact with our folks day to day. We have as instructors, we've got our POIs, our lesson plans that we could probably after 4 years of teaching them go throughout an entire course teaching it and then not remember anything you taught because you've said it so many times. But that's not what we're going to experience on a day-to-day basis. There are times where we've got to give feedback to the people that we supervise, and hopefully we're doing that on a regular basis. And feedback doesn't always end with "you're doing a great job, keep it up," and it shouldn't. It should be centered around you're doing a good job in these areas, but if you want to be able to continue to progress and show that you exceed many, if not all, expectations on your EPR, I need you to work on these things. And these are some projects that I want you to do, and I want you to be able to do them to this level. Even that seems a little bit easy. Sometimes we get into the conversations to where, you know what, you done screwed up. And you need to rearrange your priorities and start thinking a different way. Down to the conversations of where you don't see something wrong in your area, and however there is something very wrong in your area, and you need to fix it. First, you need to fix your mindset on what's going on, and then start to fix what's going on in your area. These conversations have to happen. And how you come about doing those conversations or holding those conversations can make or break the success of what you're trying to do.
You have to approach it from the right angle. Or you could cause a worse problem than you had before.
None of these conversations should be taken lightly or should just be entered into on the fly. You need to think about how you're going to present your conversation and what you want to get out of it, and think about the potential pitfalls of before you even entered in that conversation.
And I think that particularly in any culture, you always want people to think that you're cool and think that you're one of the group and think that you're whatever. And we're so guilty of that in the Air Force. Well, in all the military branches, I think, because you want to be accepted. Because no matter where you go, it's always going to be a new group of people. So there's a hesitance to come out and say the things that need to be said. Whereas the truth of it is that on some level, the military becomes your extended family. And you need to be able to treat your fellow airmen at whatever level they are like you would treat somebody in your family, which means you're going to treat them with respect. You're going to treat them with dignity. You're going to hold them to a certain standard that comes from your culture, your religion, your background, your ethnicity, your geography, whatever that is. You're going to have to hold them to that standard. But you're also going to be brutally honest with them sometimes. And say, you're really, really screwing this up. Because I love you, because you're my family, because whatever, I can't allow you to do that anymore. And that was a hard thing for me to overcome, to understand that I don't have to be cool with Sergeant Jones anymore, because if I try to be cool with Sergeant Jones, that's gonna cause her to fail, and it's gonna cause me to lose my integrity, and we can't have either of those and expect to have a successful unit. But so the next logical thing goes into counseling. And that's the next subject, is counseling airmen specifically. And here in AETC, it's kind of a different animal, because at a regular base you'll have years to be able to work with an airman and develop their skills and work with them in their personalities and that kind of stuff. But here you got pipeline students that are flying through, or cross trainees, and counseling it's a different it's a different practice. It's the same, but it's not the same.
I mean, we have to realize in counseling airmen, you just like within crucial conversations, you have to know who your audience is. And you can't just see the Air Force name tape on the uniform in front of you and say, I'm going to counsel this airman and set them straight. You have to realize where they're coming from, how new they are in the Air Force, the culture, the American culture that most of our students come from is not the culture that we are trying to build in the Air Force. So they're new to this culture, and we have to be able to understand that and be able to counsel airmen, not just berate them and pound them into line. We have to be able to get them to buy into this culture that right. they've signed up for, perhaps unwittingly, not knowing what they're getting into. None of us when we joined the Air Force knew what we were getting into. Yeah. We didn't really know what we were getting into. We may have thought we had a good idea. We didn't know what we were getting into. And we got to understand that these airmen, they don't understand exactly what it takes to be an airman, and we have to be able to know right. how to counsel them. Going back to the Fort Leonard Woodisms, that is a little bit difficult here. Because the Army does it differently than we do. The Marines right. do it differently than we do.
Right.
The Navy does it differently than we do.
Yeah.
And our airmen see that they are treated differently than their counterparts in the other services. And we right. have to be cognizant of that and still follow the guidance that we've been given and develop great airmen. So we have to recognize that there are all kinds of factors at play here in technical training that if we're not aware of them, we could be setting up airmen down the wrong path.
Correct.
That'll have to be corrected in the future.
Right. Which kind of leads me to the next subject, which is managing teams and flights. So I know that when I got my first flight, I was at Elmendorf, and that's the first time I had to manage more than like two people. I was at Elmendorf, and I was a staff sergeant. And they just like led me into this geobase office with just a room full of A1Cs and senior airmen. And the tech sergeant who had been there before me was very, very loose with leadership and management. Everybody was on a first name basis, and they had all kinds of problems. And I had gotten there right out of Korea. So I was still in fighter pilot mode. Like, let's hit the ground running. And then you go to Alaska and everybody's kind of in fishing mode. So it was a really difficult transition for me, both managing a flight for the first time, but then also learning how to rethink how I was approaching the whole thing.
Sure.
So, and I know you've had similar situations where you were put into an area where all of a sudden you're in command.
Yeah, I think one of my first good instances of that was my first deployment to Afghanistan. I was a detachment OIC for the Prime Beef Squadron, the 577th. So I was thrust out to Ghazni. I had the entire province, and I had a small team of Air Force personnel that would travel from cop to cop and do repair projects. And most of the folks that were working with me were guardsmen, and differing levels of skill, differing levels of professionalism and responsiveness to tasks, and so it was definitely a really good learning experience. I led teams before, but this was my first real challenge as a leader, to be able to be assigned to the Army, who was assigned to the Polish unit. It was really diverse, but just focusing on leading my team, doing really crucial tasks in austere environments, doing convoys that the team was either unprepared for or afraid to go on sometimes, and being able to get them trained up, get their confidence built up to go out and do these tasks. It was interesting.
Yeah, and I don't think that we've done a good job, even in PME. I've never seen it anywhere in my Air Force career. I may be naive, where there's a class on, like, this is how you do this. This is how you take... in Airman Leadership School, they talk a little bit about it, like how teams form and all that kind of thing. But that, like, it doesn't get into the nuts and bolts.
Yeah.
Of, like, this is how this actually works. And this is how you plan a schedule. And this is how, you deal with these behavior issues. Or when you start seeing cliques form within your workforce, how you kind of divide those up and remix it so that the mission is still getting done. So
team forming and leadership, we've gone through that in my PME courses, but it's you go through the basics. Here's how teams form, and you got all the different phases of forming teams and until you're a successful team. And different things that are taught fundamentally, and then there's practicums, different exercises that you do to practice some of these things. But those are just really fundamentals of teamwork and leadership. You cannot, PME can never get you to the point that you go through the course and then you're good to go. It's a practice that you have to keep practicing every day. A lot of leadership is acting. You know the part, you know the lines, you got to act it until that becomes who you are.
That's a good point.
So leadership, teamwork, it's all the same thing. You got to know what the lines are. You got to do the PME so that you know what you're supposed to be doing.
Right.
But that's still not who you are yet. You got to act the part. You got to practice it. You got to develop the skills until that is who you become.
It's interesting. So that kind of leads to the next subject. I'm always looking for a segue in here, but we're not always going to work on it. But anyway, so I'm just going to bust into this one. This is one of my favorite subjects, and it's something that I talk to the airmen about a lot. Is the sheepdog mentality? Do you remember the name of the? I'm embarrassed that I don't remember the name of the author who came up with this. He was a retired
I've got
lieutenant
a book
colonel.
of his at home. He actually came in and spoke with me at my AFIT school.
Yeah, I met him at Fort Dix. Anyways, it was a phenomenal lecture, and it's a great program. And anybody that's listening, definitely look into it. And when I do that podcast, obviously I'll have a lot more information about it. But understanding the sheepdog mentality has made a huge influence on myself in the military and how I look at my military training. But so just to recap, the really boiled down Cliff Notes version of it is that in any given group of people, you've got mostly what you consider sheep, and then
it's not a derogatory term. It's just
it's not like sheeples.
Yeah,
everybody has their own thing, and I'm a sheep in a lot of ways. Yeah, but then there's always going to be, if you have a group of sheep, then you're going to have a predator, and the predator in this scenario is a wolf, because that's generally what preys on sheep, I guess. But then, so shepherds figured out a long time ago that if you want to fight something that has, speed and fangs and eyesight and ear and claws and all that kind of stuff, then you need something just like it to be able to, you got to meet like with like. So they developed a sheepdog, but a sheepdog without proper training, with proper training, it can fight off the wolf, but without proper training, it can turn on the sheep.
Yeah, and become the wolf.
So it's a fascinating concept. I'm really looking forward to doing that. I'm actually going to sit down with Sergeant Gibbs and a couple other folks and I was thinking about even doing a solo podcast, just kind of giving my whole spiel on, because a lot of it applies to the Army. Right. Like when you go through when you read all about that, they're talking about the Army and they're talking about, because he was a soldier. Was he
He's a lieutenant colonel.
Lieutenant colonel, yeah. And so that's his mentality. And so I've kind of put an Air Force spin on it,
Right.
So, anyway.
Eating Soup with a Knife is the book that I have that he wrote.
Oh, okay.
It's not, he's written the other books about the sheepdog mentality. But Eating Soup with a Knife is a really good book on counterinsurgency operations and just learning to do things differently. But he talks a lot about this same concept in that book as well.
Yeah, that'd be my pie in the sky, would be able to actually interview him about it. So we'll see.
Good luck.
Well, yeah, we'll see. That's not. I got a couple of things on my plate. Now the other one, so the next subject that I'll be doing is getting ahead of the bullet, which is kind of a cutesy name that I came up with, but the idea is helping people that we supervise plan their year.
Right.
The idea is to say, if you have a goal, like you want to be a must promote under the new EPR system, or if you want to be NCO of the year or Airman of the year, or whatever the case is, then you need to come up with a plan. And too many of us, I was guilty of this for most of my Air Force career, it comes EPR time and your supervisor says, okay, I need your bullets. And then you got to scramble around and dig through old calendars and try to figure out what the heck you did all year.
Yeah, and it's certainly not the way that I work my career. I don't plan out necessarily. This is what I'm going to do to get to my promote now statement. Officers have those as well. this year. I guess maybe I do a little bit, but I think I'm more mission focused on getting the job done. But just because you're trying to make sure that you can set yourself up so that you can get that promotion, so you can be able to take care of your family a little bit better, or do the things that you want to do in your career, doesn't mean that you're not mission focused. But
Right.
what you need to do is to make sure that the goals and the things that you're setting in place to get you there are mission focused goals that are either developing you into the person that you need to be, or are really accomplishing the things that the wing, the squadron, or whatever, whoever you work for, need to get done that year. Now, all this has to be directly in concert, done in concert with your supervisor. The supervisor is the person that is rating on you, and that person is going to be the one who determines, what your EPR looks like.
Right.
So, getting ahead of the bullet is not done by you alone. You've got to be able
Right.
to work in concert with your supervisor, with your rater, in order to understand what the mission is, for one thing, and how you fit into it, and how you can make the greatest impact on that mission.
Is that you? That's you this time?
Yeah.
No, absolutely, yeah. Do you have to take that?
Nope.
Okay, cool.
Unless she calls again.
Yeah, that's why. The only reason my phone is ringing a couple times, and the only reason I check is to see if it says Kelly on there, and it doesn't.
This one did say Sharice, but we have this code that she can call the first time and I can hang up on her. But if she calls the second time, then I know it's emergency. I have to talk to her.
Yeah, Kelly will send me a text if it's important. Okay. She'll do that. So I'll get a text, because then I'm like, I told her if it just comes up and I can just read it, and if it's something that I can just drop whatever I'm doing, and I can give you my undivided attention. But otherwise, whatever. Okay, so back on track. There's two more subjects that will be covered in the podcast. One is planning your career and retirement. Well, like we were talking earlier, you've got lots of different phases of your Air Force career. Like we have the airmen here that are all new and excited and shiny.
Right.
And then you have people like, I don't know why I keep picking on him, but I want to say Sergeant Craddock.
Okay.
Who's kind of, he's mid-phase in his career. And he's, he's sharp, he's a good instructor, and, he's got good plans, and he's doing sorts of things. But then you've got me, where I'm retiring, like
kind of soon.
I'm literally counting the hours almost. But then we also have the benefit of civilians who've already been retired for a long time.
Sure.
So I think this is a great opportunity for us to be able to talk about an enlisted career and kind of get that whole swath of retirement is a long ways away, retirement is right now, and retirement was a long time ago.
Yeah.
And kind of talk about the coulda, shoulda, wouldas, or glad I dids, or all that kind of thing.
I think one thing that I like to talk to the airmen, the newest airmen, about careers is everybody gives this advice, and it's the best advice I've gotten throughout my career, is do the best you can at the job that you're currently in. And I apply that to whatever your career path is. I mean, your career in the Air Force may be one enlistment, and that is your plan, and you enlist in the Air Force, and that's what you're going to do, because you're going to get your GI benefits, and you're going to go out and get a degree and do different things. And I applaud people for doing that, because we need airmen that are going to come in and serve a term and then learn some stuff and then go out and do great things in their community. We also need airmen like Chief Wild was saying yesterday that are planning on doing 20 years or 25 years or 30 years and really helping our Air Force in a long-term mission. But the advice is the same, whether you're a one-term enlistment and you're out, or whether you're 30 years.
Right.
You need to do the best you can in the job that you're currently in, because your plans could change, or the situation could change. But if you're one term and you've done a great job in the Air Force, think of how much you've learned, all the experiences that you've gained, taking it out into your community. If you're a dirtbag airman and don't do anything, you're not going to be able to take very much out to your community or be able to offer a potential employer. And the same thing applies to whether if you're staying in the Air Force. So the advice is sound. no matter what your career path is. And,
Right.
and it's the best advice I've ever gotten. So having a plan is good.
Right.
Focusing in where you're at in that plan is
Right.
is really important as well.
So I would add on to that too, that if you do plan like a long-term career, always remember the longer you're in the Air Force, the smaller the Air Force gets.
Mm-hmm.
So my last two commanders here, I knew both of you as second lieutenants. You know?
Yep.
And when I was a staff sergeant, senior airman, I was a little bit nuts. You know, I was a little bit crazy. I may not have done everything that I could have, should have, would have done.
Mm-hmm.
But looking back, I'm glad that I did have the level of professionalism that I did have. You know, I know I've got my personality quirks.
Sure.
But I felt like when Colonel Allen got here, we had a rapport, and there was some kind of basic line of respect that was there because we had worked for each other in the past. And same thing with you and me, that we had that, and there was you've got that camaraderie, But that goes into, like you said, you got to do the best job in wherever it is that you are. But then also you have to be personable, and you have to be a good mentorship, and you have to be able to take leadership, and you have to be able to apply all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So there's absolutely no segue for the last.
No, there's no segue, and the only reason this one's on your list is because I told you to put it on your list.
Exactly.
So transgender issues.
Yeah.
It's it's happening.
It is.
And it's not necessarily that this is on your list because of transgender, but it's something that you alluded to before. Our world is changing. Things are changing, and we have to be able to adapt to them. So how do we as an Air Force, as NCOs, as leaders in the Air Force, how do we adapt to something like this changing our Air Force?
Right.
And who's changing more rapidly? Is it the American culture changing more rapidly, or is it the Department of Defense that's changing more rapidly? Sometimes it's hard to tell who's leading the charge on these changes. So but it's a topic that people don't seem to want to talk about.
No, it's an awkward subject, especially. Well, I would add on to that it's an awkward subject sometimes for people who have been around for a while.
Right.
So one of the things that Sergeant Allen said to me is that when he was at the Senior NCO Academy, and I guess they've had a few transgender students come through at Shepherd Air Force Base. Mm-hmm. And the impression is that the students aren't as bothered by it as the instructors and the people who've been in the Air Force for a long time.
Which is why we as leadership, we need to be sitting down and having these discussions about how are we going to approach the situation when it comes to us. Right. So without that discussion, you're doing it on the fly because it's going to happen, and we have to be professionals and be able to continue to train and get these airmen through because they're here. They're going to be able to service quite well in the Air Force, just like anybody who's walking through the door.
Right.
And we, as the older generation, we need to be able to adapt to it, regardless of
because we have to be able to
the background that we come from, or our personal opinions on the subject. So
I think it was like on the cover of the Air Force Times. I know it's been on the Air Force portal for a while, and where they talked about the new tattoo standards.
Yes,
which seems a little bit unrelated, but it was the logic behind updating the tattoo standards. Mm-hmm. Is that tattoos are becoming more prevalent within the culture.
Sure.
And if we maintain very, very strict tattoo standards, then we missed out on a lot of high-quality people.
Right.
And I think that's one of the reasons why I was personally glad to see the Don't Ask, Don't Tell policies go away. And I'm also glad to see the transgender policies go away. It's gonna be a weird thing to kind of implement because of the culture's been around so long.
Sure.
But it allows two things. One, and this is something that Secretary Gates said in his book. Have you read his book?
No.
You should add that to your reading list. It's phenomenal. but one of the reasons why he pushed for it, and he really advocated for it, was that we had people in the military who were homosexual. Mm-hmm. But we had Don't Ask, Don't Tell.
Right.
But we also have high standards of integrity. Mm-hmm. And you can't simultaneously say, everybody knows this is a homosexual person and expect them to have integrity, but then every single day live a lie.
Right.
Yep. And So I was really glad to see that, because it opened up the pool of resources and the pool of talents that we can have in the military, and it allowed people to have integrity.
Sure.
And I think the next step, now that we've done that, and we saw that, we have members who can just be themselves and be open about who they are. I think transgender is the next logical step.
Yep.
And I don't think it's going to have as much of an impact as everybody. Well, everybody I say, but like all the old school folks, it's not going to have as much of an impact as we think.
I don't think there are definitely some logistical and facility type issues questions that are out there that you really have to get into policy, and you really have to make sure you've got those all buttoned down. But personnel wise, I think you're right. I think that this may be an easier transition than a lot of people are than Facebook is saying it's going to be.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, goodness me. I'm so glad the world doesn't run based on what Facebook says. That would be a nightmare of a place. Yeah, so those are the subjects. I really thank you for your time coming down and talking about these. I'm hoping that once this comes out, I want this first podcast to be obviously the baseline.
Okay.
And I think I touched on that a little bit in the beginning, but I think this is going to set the barometer. That's not the right term. Set the temperature, set the tone. I don't know.
Set the bar.
Pick your analogy.
No,
but this will kind of set the tone for
Sure.
for what to go in, and I also think it's really, really important for the people who are going to be listening to this to have your perspective on all these different subjects.
I appreciate you setting this up and really digging into this. It's going to be good.
Yeah, I think it's going
to be beneficial for some folks.
Yeah, and
it's just another opportunity to keep our minds sharp and thinking about different issues and how we can better improve ourselves. And
I've also talked to Sergeant Gallagher because about doing actual briefings, kind of like a supplemental, because they still want to do the top 3 still wants to do professional development on a quarterly basis, but actually sit down with humans in the room and talk about things.
Sure.
So I've given him this list of subjects that I'm going to be doing the podcasts with, and then he's going to take these podcasts. I'm going to work with him and develop some outlines and some talking points so that people can listen to the podcast. So the pie in the sky is that people can listen to the podcast, get thinking about stuff, maybe come up with some questions or add stuff together, and then come together later in a group discussion.
Sure.
And if this does go well too, since this is a unique organization that we have here, I also want to take the work that we do and then make it available, to the squadron, to some other GSUs, to say, hey, this is something that we came up with to approach these issues that everybody on the enlisted force needs to deal with, and probably a lot of people on the commission side, need to be thinking about. So hopefully it's kind of like my capstone project in the Air Force, because I am growing my beard come 1 July.
Yeah, okay.
It is. Throwing away my razor for a while. That's happening.
I think this will be good. So, and we'll get it out to folks. I think this will be an opportunity for people to start some discussions, start some thinking, not only about their own careers, but about how they're going to help the coming generation. Like I said, we touched the newest generation of airmen right here, and this is a good opportunity for us to start them off right.
Good. Well, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
So there it is, the first interview done. I hope you enjoyed it. Major Wallace and I actually talked about a lot more, but I had to edit it down. Most of what we talked about is his history and the unique perspective he brings to the detachment. If you're interested in that, let me know, and I can get you an unedited copy of the interview. In case you missed the list of subjects for the upcoming interviews, here they are again. Crucial conversations, the importance of having difficult talks, even though they may not be popular or easy, and the importance of holding people accountable. Counseling airmen here in the Air Education and Training Command, and how it might be different from a regular Air Force base. Managing teams in flights is about the challenges of taking a diverse group of people and getting them all focused and work together. Sheepdog mentality and the importance of maintaining our basic profession of arms skill set, getting ahead of the bullet. In the Senior NCO Academy, they call it deliberate development, This is about helping yourself and people you may supervise develop certain missing skills and professional goal setting. Planning your career and retirement, that's just what it sounds like. We have a lot of perspectives available to us, so hopefully you can get some good pointers to get you thinking. Last is transgender issues. Openly transgender members in the Air Force are likely to become much more common, and we will start to see more transgender trainees come through our schools. While there's no doubt that each of you will treat them with the respect they deserve as airmen, it's still a new subject we need to discuss ahead of time. And that's it. New podcasts will be out each week. I should have them posted on Sunday evenings. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to reach out to me or the people I interview to talk it over. Definitely make some time to talk about these things with your peers. And in the coming months, we will also have briefings where we can sit down and talk about these subjects face to face. I hope to see you there. As always, thank you for all you do. Keep flying, keep fighting, and keep winning. Thanks.